We all know that real estate has created more millionaires than any other industry on the planet. We also know that it has created a lot of heartache due to mismanagement, overborrowing, and just simple life events that happen to all of us. Welcome to the CashFlowPro podcast. My name is Casey Brown, and I am your fearless leader. And although we might be bourbon sipping and at times foul-mouthed Southerners, we will always do our best to be honest, straightforward, and due diligent with all of the information we pass along to you. Welcome to the show. Hey there, and welcome to today's episode of CashFlowPro, your daily real estate investing podcast and YouTube channel. I'm here today with JM Ryerson, and we were just talking prior to the show, and I can't wait for you all to hear what he's got to say and what kind of just truth bombs and nuggets that he's going to drop right in your lap. So today's kind of topic is the fear of financial freedom. Now, with that being said, before we get into it, I want to first of all ask the listeners, please, to head down and smash that subscribe button so that you can be notified when we release new content, and you can make sure you come back again and again and again and constantly get a feed of pepping up individuals such as JM here, where we can just bring value to your life in general. So with that being said, head down and smash that subscribe button. And JM, welcome, sir. How are you?
Casey, I'm doing awesome, brother. Thanks for having me. This will be a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I'm always good to talk about mindset, talk about limiting beliefs, and actually, no, let me back that up. I'm cool with taking that and then like obliterating them, okay, and saying, hey, just because, and I'll tell you, one of the biggest struggles that I have, and I've mentioned it probably at least 1 million times, so I'm going to mention it 1,000,001 times on this show, is my daughters, right? And daughters are challenging from a lot of different perspectives, and that's just the truth of the matter. And I heard my daughter say one time, "Dad, I can't do that. I'm a girl," right? And I can't imagine a more limiting belief than that right there. Like that was just like a flashbang to me. I was like, wait a minute, I knew. I better never hear you say that again. And so as we move into and talk about the fear of financial freedom, I want to break down the limiting beliefs, because a lot of people believe they can't be financially free. They believe, like, man, I was put on this earth to get up at 6 o'clock, be at work by 8, drop the kids off at school somewhere in between, come home at 5, cook, eat dinner, clean up, rinse and repeat. And so there we go, man. I'm going to turn it over to you, and I want you to give us some insight in how this fear of financial freedom stuff really holds people back.
Yeah, man, and kudos to you for catching that. I'm curious, how old is your daughter, real fast, before I dive into
I've actually got two. My youngest is 8 and seems to have the lesser of the two of confidence.
Yeah, so these are learned behaviors, right? You didn't teach them. Those are people around her that probably her classmates, maybe it's another family member, but all these limiting beliefs, if you asked her when she was 5 or 4, that would not have come up, because at that point she hadn't learned that stuff. And it does somehow creep in. And that's for all of us, by the way, from your parents to your grandparents to those closest around you. So often they will project their own limiting beliefs onto you. Well, the problem, especially we're going to talk about money, there is so much self-sabotage that takes place because people don't actually believe they're worthy of making, I don't know, 1 million, 10 million, 100 million, $1 billion, whatever that number is. There's a moment where people don't feel comfortable. And the question I like people to ask is why? Where did that come from? Now, for me, Casey, I told you, I try not to use the word hate, but I hate self-limiting beliefs. And I had it around money as well, because I remember as a kid, my dad would talk about the pretty people. Well, the pretty people meant that they were at the country club, they drove nice cars, and I'm not sure why being pretty was a negative thing, but it just was. And so I started to pick this up as I got older. And the first time I made over $1 million in a year, I felt terrible, Casey. I didn't feel good about myself. And I had this attachment to money. And really what it was is these beliefs that I had inherited from my dad, who had inherited it from his dad, and et cetera, et cetera. And so this generational thing that's happened for so many people, the reality is that's not your fault. What you choose to do with that is, because 80% of our hardwires are given to us by the time we're 5 years old. That's why I asked how old your daughter was, because before 5, you are absorbing everyone else. They're telling you what you are, what you're not, what you are, what you're not. And then as you start to come into this world, as you start to get, let's say at school, somebody's like, well, you can't do that, you're a girl. And she believed that. Now, thankfully, you as a parent said, no, that's baloney. You can do whatever you want, but not
just for context. I don't think I said baloney.
I wasn't sure if I could cuss or not. So
I actually went downstairs and I had some far more foul language.
I imagine you did, but I
never imagined something like that would make me so furious. Because, there's a generation of parents, and I'm gonna throw this out there, and it may very well offend some listeners, but it's the truth. And I don't know if it's a generation thing or maybe it was a small town thing. I don't know. There is a generation of parents out there who intentionally held, because I feel like it was almost my generation before, held their children back because they feared their children would be more successful than they were. And I can't imagine that right there. That right there is a societal limiting belief ingratiation.
Yeah, there's no doubt, brother. It's a fact. The way I grew up, I'm 44. The way I grew up, my parents' generation, they let us go outside. They let us go, fall down and bang ourselves. Then came the helicopter. My generation of parenting, we helicoptered way more. And by the way, how do we best learn? Do we best learn by somebody saying, don't touch the hot stove? No.
No, you touch the hot stove, of course.
That's just the way it goes. And so it is interesting. And again, I don't want to offend anybody, but it's just a fact. My oldest, we babied him far more than my youngest. Well, guess what? My youngest is far more independent at this point. Now, these are all behaviors that we can unwind. And getting back to the subject of money, you can 100% unwind these self-limiting beliefs. You would ask me off air, do I have these systems? I do. So I'm going to give you guys one that it's really simple, and it's called the 3 R's. So if you have a fear, let's say it's a fear around money, which, by the way, money is just a tool. You can do so many amazing things with money. But since we're talking about it, let's go ahead. So the first thing is to recognize whatever that fear is. Whatever your fear is, I can't X. Write that down. So the first is to recognize the thing you need to do is write it down. The second R is we're going to release it. We are going to burn it. We're going to shred it. We're going to eat it. I really don't care. Get rid of that fear. And then lastly, you're just going to act in 100% opposition. So if your self-limiting mindset is, I can't afford X, yes, you can. Go ahead and do it. Because here's the thing. You can choose to do anything you want. It is a choice. And these self-limiting beliefs, if we take full responsibility for our actions, that is your choice at this time. Just because you were taught that, making money was bad, we all know that's not true. So let's get rid of the fear. Let's recognize it. Let's release it and then react in opposition. And brother, I do that with any fears that come up. And guess what? They're going to pop up again. And I'll do that same system again. And eventually I realize it's all nonsense. All these things that we've learned, they were somebody else's insecurities, someone else's fears, someone else's failures. And so that's not for me. That's just the story I've been telling myself for 5 years, 20 years, 40s, whatever that number is, you can rewind it by just asking the question why.
Something just occurred to me, and I guess I want to rewind back to when I said the generation of parents that held us back. And I'm always wondering if, or I'm almost wondering right now if maybe that holdback was due to fear of failure.
1000%. If you're asking my opinion,
I
one,
just because I rather than saying your parent didn't want you to be more successful than they were, that's almost it could almost have the same. It could almost come out as the same as, oh, I don't want my kids to be failures. I want my kids to be successful. It's merely a translation thing. Honestly, you know what I'm saying?
I
When the
do.
fear of
I'll give you
failure,
an example of this. The
like
first,
go
sorry,
ahead. Oh, I was just gonna say, man. I mean, I, I want my kids to fail at times, if that makes sense. Not that I definitely do not want my kids to be failures, but if they don't fail, and I see that it's so much in several of the people I grew up with, their parents were so scared of them being failures that now they're drug addicts because they never had to serve any consequences. They never got their butt whooped. They never got their vehicle taken away. They never got their phone taken away. They had everything they wanted or needed always because their parent did not want them to be a failure, so much so that they debilitated them.
yeah,
So
and
go ahead.
failure is, it's not an actual thing, right? The only reason you would fail is if you quit, right? You may make mistakes, but it's just you learn from it. So I'm going to give you an example of my experience with my own dad. When I went to become an entrepreneur, I was leaving the corporate world and I called my dad and I was really excited. Dad, I got this new career. And he said, awesome, son. How much is the salary? And I was like, oh, there's no salary. And then he goes, oh, okay. Well, they must have amazing benefits. And I'm like, no, there's no benefits, Dad.
I gotta
And my
work my
dad
ass
did
off.
not cuss. He's like, what the F are you talking about? And the point was for him, brother, is that was uncommon. He had worked for the
That's right.
same company for 35 years and having that steady salary and those benefits, which, by the way, there's nothing wrong with that. But
No, that's right.
for me, what I wanted no limit to how much I can make. I wanted anything that I could do. Like if I wanted to come and go at any time, that was for me. For my dad, that wasn't his path, and that's cool. But had I listened to him, I wouldn't have taken the road I did, which ended up being exactly what I needed, man. I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I love to build things. I love to create. I love to make a lot of money so I can help a lot of people. But that wasn't his experience. So that, to your point, brother, it wasn't that my dad didn't want me to succeed. He just, the fear of the unknown, the fear of not having a salary, that was just not his experience. And that's scary as a parent when you want to protect your child.
That's right. And so again, it's all a translation. And your father, that age group, I guess, or not age. I guess I shouldn't. I definitely should stop kind of combining everything because everybody really was raised differently. But the idea that, okay, that's great. How much is the salary, right? And that's how he measured success, or that's how he measured what you could do. And I think another fear of parents, especially my generation's parents, was that we wouldn't be able to support our own once we got like they almost didn't believe that we could ever be them and via supporting our kids the way that they financially supported us. I'm talking about purely financial, not because I was very fortunate. I was very morally supported, if you will. I didn't lack for support in my area, so that should be now told as well. But financially, I think the because sometimes I look at my kids and I'm like, gosh, what are you serious? You're never going to make it in this world like that. I mean, the first thing you do is get up more. Where's my iPad? Like, I'm like, really? Can we get underwear and shoes and socks and dressed and teeth brushed and then worry about the damn iPad? No, it's that. And so I look at my kids, I'm like, all right, how are they ever? And I'm like, but then I stop and I'm like, okay, stop right there, because your parents thought the same thing about you. But you see, like, how, what I guess my point here is, imagine a maze with a bunch of square corners, and at every turn there's limiting, limiting. Everything is limiting, and it's a maze of sorts that you have to weave around and through and look, and it's a proverbial maze to get past all that.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. And look, I don't fault any of these parents. Generationally, we can generalize on how it was then versus now versus the future. Look, parents want to protect. That's a fact. There were different generations that have done it differently. Again, the way I was raised versus the way I've watched my kids be raised, it's just a different feel. Now, what I have learned is I don't want to put any restrictions on what my kids can do. So my oldest son, he's going to be the number one tennis player in the world. Look, I could say all the reasons he won't. I could list it out why that's not going to happen. But by the way, it's not my journey. It's his. If he chooses to pursue it and he's willing to put in the work and he's willing to do everything it takes, and let's say he doesn't make it, let's just say that happens. Guess what? He can at least say he gave it his very best. And nobody told him he couldn't along the way, even though there's lots of people that will. Coaches, he'll have buddies that'll be like, you're not talented enough, you're not tall enough, you're not whatever. Say whatever it is. But the fact is, and I love what you're doing with your show, because look, you're educating somebody on financial freedom. You're educating people on financial literacy. These are not things that have been taught in our traditional curriculum. They're still not today. If you want true education reform, it starts with the mindset. And that's why when you and I were talking off air, I was like, brother, I can talk about investing. I could do that. But the truth is, it starts up here. Until people realize and really believe they are worthy of attaining whatever that goal is, it's not going to matter, because they'll reach that goal and then they'll self-sabotage anyway. You see it with lottery winners all the time, man. They get all this money in, but they have no financial literacy and they blow it on all kinds of things because they don't think they're worthy of having that money. And it's a tragic tale, but that's why I love what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, I told my mother the other day, this just happened a couple of days ago. I was talking on the phone with her, and I said, we were talking about business and what we've got going on, how the podcast is going, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And she was talking about, one time she was dealing with, she went to church or something with a commercial real estate agent, and my mom and stepdad wanted to sell their house or something. And the commercial real estate agent said, I don't do deals like that. They're just too small. I just don't do it. And I had to explain to her that why. She was like, I just never imagined a real estate agent would say they couldn't. And I'm like, listen, hey, there's people who, if I know they're on the other end of that phone line, and they're calling me, I wouldn't take $10,000 to answer the phone and talk to them. Do you see what I'm saying? Because, and what I told her, and this was a limiting belief of hers, was not all money is created equal, because the time that it takes to get some of it and the sacrifices that it takes to get some of it is far greater than what other avenues you could take, right? And she was just astonished that I would even make the comment that there's people who could call my phone and I would not answer for 10 grand. I mean, now that's obviously an extreme. That's how I typically frame things up or tee things up to talk about. But the extreme of that is, obviously, if I knew I could say hello and hang up for 10 grand, absolutely. But the bottom line is if I had the understanding that somebody was calling my phone and I had to fulfill whatever expectation was on the other end of that line for 10 grand, there's no way, no matter what it is, that I would do, because they're just complicated people. Right.
Yeah, they're not in alignment with you, right? That's
That's right.
the whole
That's right.
idea.
And that's a very good term, because that's one thing that in our investing business, rather, that we really point on and we really hound, And one of the culture that we bring to it is alignment of interests. Alignment of interests is of absolutely the most utmost importance to us and our success in our business, because as soon as you get out of that, as soon as you're like, man, to hell with you, I'm worried about me, you're going to have a hard time getting people to invest and come on board and say, hey, let's work with you. So that's just some thoughts there. But I want to get into the fear of financial freedom specifically, because so many people literally go to work, come home, go to bed at night, and they have these aspirations or these thoughts of, you know what, man, my kid had a field trip yesterday, and I couldn't get off. I've already used all my vacation time. I couldn't get off to go on to the candy factory with him or her. And then they're like, man, that guy over there, he owns his own business. He works for himself. He does this, and he seems to always be able to do whatever he wants to do. And all right, John, let's do this. Not, I don't know what JM stands for, but I'm not talking to you if it's John. But all right, John, let's do this. Okay, so quit your job, find something you're passionate about, figure out how to monetize it. Then guess what? You can take off on field trip days. You can leave your secretary to answer the phone and go take off on field trip days. If that's value to you, then make that happen. Don't just take a sucker punch to the gut and turn around and walk away. Make it happen.
Yeah, look, man, everybody compromises in life, and they choose these things because that's what they were taught. That's what they think their value is. And to your question with financial freedom, look, if someone can do it, you can as well. So for instance, Elon Musk, most people don't know this. They think that he has this brilliant IQ. He's actually not. When it comes to his IQ, it's very middle of the road. The difference, what most people don't realize, is he has vision. He has courage. You could say he has whatever, cojones, whatever you want to call it, and he's willing to put himself out there. He wasn't born gifted for being the smartest man alive. In fact, the smartest man alive died extremely poor and it had very little because he wasn't able to relate. My point is, these are all stories that we tell ourselves, just like you talked about. Can't leave the candy shop, I think, or the candy store, you said, to go on the field trip. That's just a mindset. That's 100%. That's your choice. And that's cool. Like, look, if you love that, just know your compromise, your sacrifice is you're not going to be able to take your child to the field trip. Those are all choices. Yeah. You can choose to remove yourself from that. You can choose to be financially free, but it is your choice. You are not a victim. No one on this, well, in this country, I'll go there because I can't speak to other countries because I haven't been to all of them. But in our country, it is a choice. You can choose to be free financially, spiritually, whatever your thing is, but let's say financially, or you can choose not to be. And that's okay. Just as long as you can accept that it's your choice, then we can agree on that.
Yeah. And that's so if you go back to the example of my daughter, right? And you'll realize the way you just framed it up is it's a little bit of a balancing act, because at the same time, if she grows up, decides she wants to work a minimum wage job, or a minor wage job, let me say minimum wage job, whatever. If she grows up and decides that she just wants a minimalist existence, you know what? That's okay too. And I, for one, to look at how you can make that justification is based on her scale of happiness, right? Hey, some people want to leave work, go home, and forget about it. They don't want to have to go home and think about 48 different things ratcheting around and moving and all these pieces of this puzzle that they want to go work their 8 hours and they want to go home and forget about it and have a couple beers and go to bed. And that is fine. That's perfectly acceptable. I just don't want people thinking that's that we're saying that, hey, just because you do that, you're a failure, because you're not. My daughter, any of my sons, any of my kids, if that's what they decide they want to do and that makes them happy and they're good people, tax-paying citizens of this country, so be it. I just want them to know that that doesn't have to be that way if they don't want it to be.
Yeah, and you nailed it, brother. My best friend in the whole world, he is wildly gifted. And I tried to tell him, because I hired him to be part of where I was at the time, my second company. And I was like, Tori is his name. I was like, Tori, you could make blah, blah, blah. And he could, but he didn't enjoy it. And to your point, he wants to be able to go to work and come home. And by the way, that's okay. I can't want it more for him than he wants it himself.
There you go. Nail on the head. 100%.
So it is a choice. And that's why, but your listeners, the ones that are here that want to be financially free, look, some of these things you just got to face them. You got to look and say, am I self-sabotaging? Is the story I'm telling myself supporting what I'm trying to do, or is it not? Here's the hardest one. This one's going to suck for people, but you got to hear it. The people you're surrounding yourself with, are they supporting you and lifting you up, or are they dragging you down? There is no middle ground, by the way. And I hope you hear this clearly. People either lift you up or they bring you down. There is no in between. And if 100%. You're not succeeding to the level that you want to be, start to look at starting to replace, supplement, change who's around you. And I know that can be painful. Trust me, I've gone through it with family members as well. But here's the deal. It's just that their success level, their lifestyle, it's not yours unless you choose it to be. And it's cool, but let's be clear. It is your choice.
That's right. And man, you couldn't have put it any better, because and Grant Cardone, Lord help him. He and I have talked a couple of times, and he is very to the point, blowhard, it's who he is. But in one of his books, he said that exactly what you just said. If they're not helping you get to where you want to be, get rid of them. It's painful, but if somebody is you're right, somebody is either pushing you up or they're holding you back. And if they're holding you back, you don't have time for that. You don't have room for them if this is what you want in life.
Yeah, and that question is such a big one. What do you want? What do you want? And then once you figure that out, how do you go get it? Life is not that complicated if you think about it.
I tell my daughters that all the time. I know we keep talking about daughters, but I'm like, honey, baby, listen, okay, life's not that complicated, honey. Just because the sucker broke in half doesn't mean that now our whole day is ruined. Okay. Eat, figure out a way to eat it. Let's tackle this and let's go. I've been talking a lot about candy. Maybe I need some sugar or something. I don't know.
But you know what I love, Casey, about talking about your kids? Because we see these behaviors and we can help guide them to correct some of those behaviors. But to your point, look, for instance, let's just talk about designing your day for a quick second. There's lots of books on this, but let's just start with a simple thing. You get to choose how you're going to start your day. So for instance, talked about maybe it was your son, maybe it was your daughter finding the iPad. Now, if that's something you do, let's just take your listeners for a moment. The first thing you do is you look at your phone. Guess what? You are now on someone else's agenda. You're not on your own. Yep. So in my quick example, before my foot touches the ground, and brother, I don't care how bad I got to go pee. Before that foot touches the ground to go run to the bathroom, because that's my routine, is I get up and I go to the restroom. I think, and if my wife's awake, I'll verbalize it. If she's not, I'll just say it in my head. 3 things I'm grateful for. And when I start my day that way, guess what? I have a really good day. Yep. But if I pick up the phone and there's an email and there's like someone else's agenda, and typically it's not positive, especially if we're going to social media or media in general, guess what? I typically have a bad day. So it's really not complicated. Just align whatever goal you want and start being intentional. I want to have an amazing day. Cool. Let's talk about being grateful. Just verbalize it. Then go take care of your mind, your body, your soul. If you do those simple things, if you do those 3 things in your first hour, half hour, you will 100% win the day. Or you could let somebody else's agenda run you. And again, people are like, why are we talking about this? Because if you want to be financially independent and free and make sound decisions, you should be intentional about what you're doing. Don't haphazardly go through life.
Yeah. And starting your day is one of those things that I think a lot of people overlook. And you're exactly right. When you look at it as a tipping point, whether you're on your time or whether you're on somebody else's time, and right here is groggy-eyed, just waking up, coming to life, and you automatically tip your scale to being on somebody else's time, man, that's you're spot on with that, dude. I mean, that's an unbelievable way to look at it because. Hi, this is Casey Brown, host of the CashFlowPro podcast and YouTube channel. Have you been thinking about investing in real estate but just don't know where to begin? I'd like to help by inviting you to check out our website at www.3000capital.com. There you will find an array of material that will help you learn all about real estate syndication. And while you're there, be sure to check out our free video series download titled 5 Must-Know Keys to Success in Passive Real Estate Investing. I'd also like to personally thank you for making CashFlowPro part of your day. Now, back to the show. So when you get up in the morning and you verbalize what you're thankful for or what you're going to accomplish today or how you're going to tackle certain tasks that are due, man, that really just, in my opinion, it changes everything.
Yeah, man. In my opinion, if you win the morning, you're going to win the day. And I'm not one of those that get up at 4 a.m. because, look, you need to sleep. It's actually one of the most important things you do, arguably, of anything outside of breathing air. But what I will say, Casey, that's so important. If you want to show up as the best dad, the best husband, the best, investor, let's just talk about that. You cannot do it unless you're taking care of yourself. And for instance, I work with a lot of really high net worth investors. Guess what? If their health sucks and they are failing, it doesn't matter how much money they've made. And I've seen it time and time again. So the first thing, in my opinion, you need to prioritize is you. And I work with, especially my female clients, I'll say, hey, what do you do for yourself? And they'll list the house, the kids, the spouse, and they'll give you about 1,000 things. And I said, no. I said, what do you do for you? And the point is, you need to be a little selfish so that you can be the most unselfish person. So if you want to be the best investor, make sure you take care of yourself first so that you can show up with the most amount of energy, so you can have the health to enjoy all these things. So it's all really related, but it's funny, man. People don't think about doing that for themselves because they're so accustomed to taking care of everyone else. That's right. It becomes an execution problem. So, all right. Well, listen, man. Hey, so we're kind of running out of time here. And with that, we ask a couple of questions to every guest that comes on the show. And I know your answers are going to be awesome. So the first question is what is the best book that you've recently read or are currently reading? Oh, recently read. Well, I read Think and Grow Rich all the time. And then I also Man Search for Meaning. I do both those books at least once a year for perspective and mindset. So those will be the ones I would say. Yeah. Awesome. And both are good books for sure, especially Think and Grow Rich. I mean, it's the timeless way to turn your thoughts into prosperity. So awesome. What is a dream vacation that you have taken or hope to take? Oh man. Well, I love Thailand, my top 3 would be Thailand, Costa Rica, and Scotland. Those would be my top three. But the one that I'm going to go on is fly fishing in New Zealand. They're supposed to have amazing brown trout. And I grew up in Montana.
Wow.
I love fly fishing, so that's where I want to go.
Sure. Awesome, man. Fly fishing is definitely a technique. It's one that I never could figure out. Never, ever, ever could figure out. I used to watch them do it in Colorado on the streams up there fishing for trout. And man, I never could figure it out, even though it's a very simple concept. So awesome. All right. Well, listen, JM, if somebody heard something or they want to reach out to you, maybe talk to you about maybe there's some business coaching or any of the topics that we covered, what's the best way for the audience to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I appreciate that, brother. Let'sGoWin.com. It's got free articles on it, free stuff there. And they have the Let's Go Win podcast if they want to check that out. And then Let's Go Win 365 on any social media platform. And I love hearing from people. So, Casey, I just appreciate the opportunity, and man, you're awesome.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, we're so glad you're here with us, and glad that we could hopefully maybe even if we didn't do anything, just help one person get through the day, or put one little nugget in somebody's lap to help them figure some things out that then I consider a win. So awesome. Listen, James, thank you so much for your time. Listeners, as always, thank you for your time. We really, really appreciate you spending the last 30 or so minutes with us here at the CashFlowPro. And don't forget to head down and please smash that subscribe button so that you can be notified when we release new content, new episodes. And don't forget that, we covered here the fear of financial freedom. And don't forget that just because you fear the possibility of a life-changing something, the financial freedom that comes along with it is so rewarding. I mean, I don't think you'll find anything better than when you can finally dictate what you do with your own time. So with that, JM, thank you so much again. I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of the day. CashFlowPro is hosted by Casey Brown, founder and CEO of 3000 Capital, a commercial real estate investment firm committed to providing its investors with ongoing cash flow and helping them build long-term wealth. If you enjoyed today's podcast, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll be notified about all our future episodes. You can find more information about us and our investment philosophy by clicking the link in the show notes below. Thanks for listening.